Said the Milsa B'dichas, so it's not going to be on the recording, but so we're in the Maimer of Avdi David, and this week is Parshas Vayigash. And Avdi David, even though it was the Maimer that was said on Achar Shal Pesach, they put it in the slot for Parshas Vayigash in Sefer Marmarim. We'll look at the base, which I found the Sefer for, by the way. And now we can make copies of this Hashem, so it'll be much easier. So they put the Maimer over here because it's Haftarah of Parshas Vayigash. So we have a Sheikhs. But in general, we're talking about the difference between Yehuda and Yosef. That Yehuda is the Inyan of Hada, and Yosef is the Inyan of Hesafa, which is what both their names mean and where they come from. And we said that the Inyan of Hada is the Inyan of bowing down. It's the Inyan of saying that like you're submitting to something higher, whether it's the Inyan of giving thanks, that is something that you couldn't have gotten on your own, or if it's the Inyan of admitting something, which means that you're admitting that there's something that's higher, as in you're admitting that there's a logic that's higher, you're admitting that there's something that's higher than your logic, whatever it is, but the Inyan of admission is submitting to something higher. And we said that that's in a sense reminiscent of the fact that you have will, and the will gets drawn down into actual action, and you're sort of forcing the will down into this physical world, even though the will is something which makes humans distinct from every other living thing, that we could have will that isn't just for biological processes and things like that. And in distinction, you have the nature of intellect. The nature of intellect is to keep on adding. That when you have an idea, you can build on that idea, and every idea builds upon itself further and further and further, and that's how intellect functions. That's more reminiscent of Yosef. So, v'hinei beis inyanim ela b'chlolos avedus ha'adam beis ha'inyanim beis efani avodah limud ha'torah v'kiyum ha'mitzvos. In general, these two notions represent the notions of limud ha'torah and fulfilling mitzvahs. The inyana shel Torah, the concept of Torah, is that Hashem and the Torah are all one. As it says in Tanya, very apropos for the times. When a person learns Torah, they're able to connect to Hashem in such a way that there is no comparison. There is no other way of connecting to Hashem that compares to the way that a person who learns Torah connects to Hashem. For all of the jokes about Litzvah Yeshiva Shkait or whatever about learning the Torah, really it is on that level. As in, we're going to say there's a big ma'alos doing mitzvahs too. But we had the reason why I say it's appropriate for the time is because it was yesterday's Tanya. But learning Torah gives you such a connection to Hashem that there's no comparing, because your mind is enclosed in Torah, and Torah is the will of Hashem, but it's the intellect. It's the will of Hashem as it's expressed in intellect. When a person learns Torah, their mind is literally grasping godliness, and it's in their mind. Their mind's eye is fully occupied with Hashem. And when a person does a mitzvah, they're making their betachtanim, they're using their body, and they're refining it and everything. But their essence isn't literally tied up to Hashem's essence, like we had in the Kriya of yesterday. When a person learns Torah, they're connected to Hashem. They're literally included. It's a mind blowing thing. So that's what you have when you learn Torah.
Just quickly, so I've understood the concept of the Shekhinah dwelling with you when you study Torah, but there's another concept, or are they interrelated, where you're clothed in Hashem while you study Torah? Yes.
So in Parak Lamed Hey, I think, and in Aleph and in Gimel, the concept of what the Shekhinah of Tanya, the concept of the Shekhinah dwelling is explained, and that's more of an external aspect in a sense. The Shekhinah is the divine presence dwelling. This isn't a dwelling of a divine presence. This is what your mind is included in.
Okay.
And your mind is included in Getlachait. It's like mamash, like you're hugging the king, that you're included in his clothing when you hug the king. It's a good point, but they're slightly distinct concepts. If I wanted to start making kokolim, I would say that it's the difference between the mitzvah of learning Torah and the mitzvah of Yudiyas Alikos. But that's we're not here for kokolim. You can say this nafkamin is a halacha and a lot of good things. But yeah, that's when you learn Torah, you have such an essential connection to Hashem. ובכל עולם שלומד את התורה, ובכל עולם שלומד את התורה, הנה על ידי הלימוד מגיע לתורה כפי שהיא לאמיתוסו פנימיוס בעולם הזה. And in any world in which Torah is learned, in this world, like whichever plane, whichever level, the learning Torah reaches the ultimate premise of what Torah is. ומובן שכיוון שעל ידי לימוד התורה מגיעים לאלה זה. Through learning Torah, you get to this מעלה. הרי יש לאדם הלמד תענוג גשמק לדבר. There in parentheses geshmak. Sometimes Hebrew words get very dry. You gotta throw in Yiddish. Some maimar, like the really juicy maimar, like in general, and this one apparently isn't that really juicy because I think it's like a shmak maimar, but it's not juicy in that sense. Some maimar, like you have Yiddish phrases, and the Rebbe just keeps on laying out the Yiddish phrases, and like because there's no way of like explaining. Like one of my favorite maimar has a phrase like genug die kunstens, enough with the semantics, like because it's a very semantical maimar, but then like they were just like stop genug mit die kunsten, you need to have it. So anyhow, the Rebbe says when a person learns Torah, because he's connecting to the Eibusher in such a way, there's a geschmack in the learning Torah. But the concept of doing mitzvahs in distinction is physical action. Because fulfilling mitzvahs is with physical things. Things which are external to the person. This is nit-er. It's not him, as the Rebbe says in Yiddish. And because of this, you need to have asiyah, which asiyah, you could also say that like if you force someone to do something, you could like make him do it in a sense. I mean, it translates into English, which is very fortunate. But if you could like make an object, you could also make someone do something. And when you say you make him do it, the lashon of asiyah, the lashon of making, is, it doesn't really translate because over here we're also saying doing that you're doing it. Whatever the point is that you can make someone do something, and the same way you can make someone do something, you can do an action, and the lashon of asiyah is the same. Like you use the same word to say that you're forcing someone to do something. So, the point is that when a person does an action, you're making him get involved with things that aren't him. In a sense, you're lowering him to a lower level. So shiur the madrigasid is going down to a lower level. From a high tower to a low dwelling. You're making a person go from his intellectual self, from who he is, that he's a human, he's able to think, he has rationality and logical processes. You take him and you lower him down to the notion of he's gonna do something mechanical. Technically, a robot could put on tefillin. You could design a human sculpture and the robot could wrap the tefillin. I saw Rabbi Ullman did some trick with the tefillin that he got it off in 2 seconds. I need to learn how to do that. It's just on my mind for the last 2 days. The point is that a robot could put on tefillin. I'm sure you could program the robot to wrap tefillin better than I can. But it's something physical, and it's not, it doesn't express the ultimate of who I am. I'm so much more than, a human body that can wrap tefillin. But when a person does a mitzvah, the tackle will bring themselves down to that level of, I'm, a physical being, I'm a physical entity, and I do. And as it's brought in many Maimarim, also, even a behema, even an animal, has the ability to do things. And in the faculty of action, in the faculty of asiyah, a person and an animal, a human and an animal are on the same level. They can both do things. An animal can't necessarily think about how to do things, but the animal could do that. It could do things. Because this Yerida, where a person is brought down from the level of he's an intellectual thinking person down to the level of he just does things, and this Yerida is like a level of Kfiyah V'Hida, that a person is brought down to a lower level. He's forced to, he's in a sense admitting, he's letting go of his intellectualism. This is also why in the mitzvah of learning Torah, Hine al Torah tzarich liyos chayes tainog geshmak v'limud Torah. There needs to be a geshmak in learning Torah. And fulfilling mitzvahs needs to be through Kabbalas El Dafka. And we say the lashon of Kabbalas El, accepting the yoke of heaven, and it's something that we just say it by root. But in general, yokes are put on animals and not on people. We're used to the notion of Kabbalas El. I say we're used to the notion. At least when I was a kid, we heard the notion. He explained that a yoke is something that they still do put on animals, but we lived in Brooklyn and we weren't seeing yokes anytime soon. Maybe if you went upstate and they faked like a farm to show you like to show the city dwellers how farms and barns are supposed to work. Maybe then we saw a yoke, but in general we didn't see yokes. I don't know if you guys, firstly, have seen yokes. I don't know if the parable necessarily went over your heads, like whatever. But
maybe you.
I've seen
You have?
I've seen a few, not in action, in a museum.
Yeah, okay.
But now, they use tractors. They don't use.
Trying to imagine someone from like the 1900s hearing like a conversation like these guys have never seen yokes. But we never really seen yokes. Yokes are things that go on animals. The animal, it helps the animal pull whatever machinery it is that you're trying to get that you're trying to squeeze the meager horsepower out of the one horse, or the few horses. But that's what a yoke is. And yokes are put on animals because humans are usually not the ones carrying the loads. We only have like 1/5 of a horsepower. So usually we're the ones that are like steering the horse or trying to figure out how to make the machines or whatever it is. But Kabbalas El, the notion of Kabbalas El means that we're saying, hey, we're Sugam Adaber. We're going to act like Sokachai. We're humans, but we're going to act like an animal in the sense that we're just going to give our body over to what the Eibusher wants. A person could do a mitzvah without Kabbalas El, just to tie it into Hanukkah, because, we're here and it is Hanukkah. But the Yevonim, they wanted people to actually do mitzvahs like a Sogam Adaber. They wanted people to say, you have a mitzvah, the mitzvah makes sense. And we're going to do the mitzvah because it makes sense. You want to eat kosher because you think it's healthy, fine, eat kosher because you think it's healthy. Or if you want to eat kosher because you say that you respect values and traditions. Respecting values and traditions is a very, noble and culturally rich thing for humans to do. So that's why you do the mitzvah. But not because the Eibusher told you, and you're going to say, I'm going to avoid myself of all intellectual reasoning, and I'm going to do what the Eibusher said because that's what the Eibusher said. So that's, in a sense, a difference. And that's why it says that Yevonim love Torah, because Torah, there's an immense geschmack in Torah. You can't describe the geschmack. You gotta know the geschmack in Torah, but there's a geschmack in Torah, and the Yevonim, they love that. They said that this is fantastic. There's no greater geschmack than you have of logics and whatnot. And Torah is very logical. It's very very smart. I don't need to go around praising the Torah. Well, the point is that Yevonim loved that. They didn't like and they liked the notion of doing mitzvahs. They didn't like the notion of doing mitzvahs with Kabbalas El. But mitzvahs necessarily require. They don't necessarily require Kabbalas El. The mitzvah requires Kabbalas El. That's what the mitzvah is for. There's a midrash that says that the Eibusher doesn't actually care about where we shecht an animal, but he wants us to have he wants to refine us, and by virtue of telling us where to shecht the animal, we're getting refined in the sense that we're doing what the Eibusher wants, regardless of reason or no reason. It doesn't make a difference to the Eibusher etzem, but he wants.
You mean on the throat?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to the Eibusher if we shecht the animal on the throat and this way and that side and this point. And the Midrash says it's to refine us. So mitzvahs require Kabbalas El. That's what mitzvahs are essentially for. It's shaykh to get away with doing a mitzvah without Kabbalas El, but that's not what a mitzvah is betzim. It's also shaykh technically to get away with learning Torah without a geschmack, as I'm sure any kid in KT or Mariah could tell you. But Torah be'etzim requires geschmack, mitzvahs be'etzim requires Kabbalas El. That's what they both are. Ve'heim beis hanyanim, the Yosef Torah, v'Yehuda mitzvahs. And these are two hanyanim of Yosef, which represents Torah, and Yehuda, which represents mitzvahs. Let's see what time it is. We have 3 more minutes. I don't know if we could do another ace in 3 minutes. Any questions?
No.
I could discuss the Shkina thing if you have another 3 minutes.